Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime Series with Kevin, where we add value to people's lives, happening every day at 12 on ebizradio.com. Joining me for the Lunchtime Coaching segment today, we have a very interesting guest. I've been watching some of his videos and absolutely love what he has to say. He's an accomplished entrepreneur, global keynote speaker, and best-selling author, Nic Haralambous. Nic, how are you doing?
Good, very well. Thank you for having me, and you nailed the surname.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm so glad. Nic, to kick it off today, I want to tell people, well, you tell people more about you, what it is you do, just so they have some insight about you, for those who don't know.
Cool. I'll give the short version of a long and sordid tale. So I started coding when I was 11, built my first website at 12, hacked my first computer at 13, never did that again because it made me feel uncomfortable. At 16, I started my first business. Then I went on to study journalism, politics, and philosophy, and at that point was continuing to build businesses, a band, a news portal for students, a social network about the same year that Facebook started a social network. So I've been building businesses for a long time, and then in the last 10 years, I've failed a lot. I wrote a book about my failures called Do, Fail, Learn, Repeat. Of the maybe 14 businesses in the last 2 decades, I've only had 3 successful exits. So that is 11 failures. And my latest book is called How to Start a Side Hustle, which is available globally and nationwide and is currently a bestseller. I'm also in the process of researching my 3rd book. And I have a podcast that helps me do that called The Curious Cult Show. And I'm quite prolific on writing. I publish on my blog frequently, my LinkedIn every single day, and YouTube 2 or 3 videos a week.
Fantastic. So, I mean, like, one of the first questions that, when I spoke to Ingrid about this, she was like, yeah, no, you have to speak to Nic, just like get Nic on the show. And one of the first questions to pose here, and it's sort of like piquing interest in my mind, is best to talk about the idea of building a worldview. So yeah. Why build a worldview, and like, what's the point? Why?
It's so interesting. Even without remembering that this was going to be the topic of our conversation, I've been giving a lot of thought today to the idea of intentionality. Like, how intentional are we about the lives that we're leading? Do we let life happen to us, or are we existing in the world inside of a framework that we have chosen because it's the way we want to exist in the world? And that kind of informs the idea of a worldview, right? So are you someone who likes to give charity? Do you believe in charity? Have you ever thought about that? Are you someone who supports local or likes to just buy anything because it's convenient? What's your view on that? Are you liberal leaning left? Are you far leaning right? Are you in the middle? Are you political at all? Are you religious? Do you want to be in a career forever? Do you believe in the idea of having children and marriage? And if you do believe in marriage, why? And what informs that? These questions plague me. They have plagued me since I was a kid. I remember from the age of 7 being an atheist, walking into the Greek Orthodox church that my parents forced me to go to and being like, no, this is not for me. I'm not kissing that image of Jesus because 300 other people have kissed it before me, and that is gross and germs and nasty. So this is what I mean by formulating a worldview and existing inside of that. Now, I've got a list of 10 Nicisms, things that I live by. They are updated frequently, and one of them is strong opinions loosely held. This is one that I doubt will ever be updated or changed, because it is one of the core fundamental beliefs that I have, is that you should have strong opinions about things. You should believe strongly about the things you work on, you live by, you experience, but if the facts change, it is okay to change your opinion. Strong opinions loosely held. And that you can only have if you have an opinion, if you have a worldview. But I know too many people who just exist in the world. They have no intentionality. They let life happen to them, and then they're victims. And that's what I'm trying to avoid.
The key word that I wrote down here is intention. Yep. I think most individuals get up in the morning and kind of go, okay, cool. I know what my day is going to look like. I'm doing my calendar, and they kind of just go about their day quite unintentional.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, they get there and kind of go, okay, well, what did I do today? How come, and you kind of go, well, what was the intention in the first place?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, do you find it? Do you think that, working through the work that you do, being an entrepreneur, being engaged with people, that a lot of people kind of miss it? They kind of don't even realize?
Yeah. I, over the last 2 years, have shifted my career from building businesses to helping people build better businesses. So I do a lot of coaching at a startup level, at an executive level. I'm helping an executive get his business from 150 million turnover to 300 million turnover in the next 18 months. I'm helping a startup launch their business from zero to their first sale. And across all these people, I don't help them with their businesses. I help them with their mindset. I help them understand that you cannot exist in the world floating through it if you want to achieve anything. If you don't want to achieve anything and you're happy like living a pretty regular life, that is awesome. Like, good on you. As long as it's an intentional choice, good for you. Like, I'm happy. What I like to tell people, not everybody can be an entrepreneur, because then who's going to work in their businesses? Like, that's cool. If you just want to be someone who works, that is awesome. But as long as it's an intentional choice. And for example, I don't believe in marriage. I think it is a system that doesn't work for me. It works for some people, but not for me. That is a choice I've had to make through lots of things that have happened to me. And it needs to be an intentional choice. What I could have done is grown up in a Greek Orthodox home, found the first woman that I thought was appropriate, married her, had 2 kids, got a white picket fence house, and gotten divorced 5 years later, because that's what the world tells me to do. Instead, I'm voraciously curious and intentional about the things I do, the things I work on, and what I want to achieve. And the basics that I start with when I coach people, whether it's on my Side Hustle Academy, which we're in our second cohort, we've got 23 students building businesses in a 6-week period, or the executives, I ask them the same thing. What is your idea of success? What are what I call your success triggers? How do you define success? And you will be stunned, from the executive earning $1 million to 2 million Rand a month down to the startup who's earning 0. How many people have never thought about what success means to them? And I'll give you my version here. I used to think I wanted $1 billion business with 7,000 employees in 20 countries. The idea of success for me now is the freedom and the time to work on the things that I love to work on. That's it. That's my idea of success. And what's yours? If you listen to this now, what is yours? Have you ever thought about it? Or are the things you measure yourself against what other people tell you success looks like?
Yeah, I think it's a valid point. I don't think people, again, and it's so intentional. That question is intentional, completely intentional. Yeah. If you're talking about success, then what does it look like? Absolutely. Yeah. So, adding to this first conversation, or the first question is, why do you do what you do? So, I mean, you've covered some of it already, I'm assuming, but there's a bigger why. Is that because of the aim of how you sort of, or how you showcase success for yourself? Is that why you do what you do?
I think that this answer evolves, and it should evolve for most people. So if you are aware of it, there's this Japanese concept called Ikigai. If you aren't aware of it, it's the English translation is your reason for being. Now, I don't believe that everybody has a single reason for being. I think we have a reason for being right now. So my why changes over time. And when I was younger, I wanted to build businesses because I wanted the world to know that I could. I wanted to be rich and famous, and I wanted everybody to know that I could do these things. And as I've gotten older, I want to help people live the kind of life that doesn't give them stress, that doesn't give them anxiety, that gets them back in a place where, unlike I was in my 20s, they're not losing their hair, literally lost my hair from stress and anxiety. So that's kind of why I do what I do. The more practical reasons are I'm absolutely obsessed with just building cool things and helping other people build cool things. I've dedicated my life to learning how to build businesses, how to acquire customers, how to write a strategy, how to execute it. So now that I have these skills, I feel like my job, it's my responsibility is to help other people learn these things easier than I did.
Fantastic. So, I mean, I'm just as you're speaking, I'm just looking at all our questions here, and because you go, from like being in that position, what do you do when you're having a bad day, or when you needing to seek advice? And I'm like, is there something you listen to when needing to make a decision or seek advice? Is it someone you phone? Is there a process?
Sure. It will vary. It will vary a lot. I'm trying to think of if there's something very specific that that I've written down in the questions that you're hoping that I answer. But generally, I kind of think that it's important to have perspective. And I've spent my life without mentors, and I've struggled with this a lot. So when I'm feeling down, I like to lean on my friends who I've chosen in my network, and those friends are people I want to be like. So I always feel like if you don't have a mentor, you should start finding friends who are people you want to emulate. And that's what I've done. My friends are ambitious and successful. They are 100 millionaires, Ferrari racing drivers, experts in their fields with PhDs. They're just really great people. And I lean on them when I'm having a rough day. I see a psychologist frequently. And for me, that can vary from once a month to once every 3 months. So I am very big on mental fitness. People need to reframe the idea of psychology. Psychology is like a physical coach for a professional sports athlete. Why would entrepreneurs and high impact people not have mental coaches if physical professions have physical coaches? So I definitely use the psychologist to my advantage to help me unpack the boxes in my brain and get things moving again. But I'm also quite intentional about my morning routine. So for example, this morning, woke up at 5:30, meditated for 15 minutes, walked my dog for 45 minutes, exercised for 15 minutes, read for 30 minutes, and then I started work. Like, those things prevent bad days more than they help me cure bad days. So I have bipolar tendencies. So like when things are great, they're fucking amazing. When things are bad, they're really bad. So I've tried to construct a life that helps me find the middle, because the middle is where my sweet spot is. And these practices help me find that middle more frequently.
Yeah, I love that you say it helps prevent. And I think a lot of the time people don't, they have a big either or kind of conversation. So if I have to get up in the morning and do X, Y, and Z, then I should feel better, so, but yet it's not a complete preventative. It's a case of saying, well, how do you get into a habit formed behavior that really helps with this intention that we started off with, right? So, I mean, With that said, how do you think it affects your decision-making processes? Because you can go into the brain science of it, but what do you think? How does having a structured way or a structured approach and finding the right kind of conversations to be in, how do you think that influences your decisions?
Yeah. So I'm going to first start off by quoting Jeff Bezos. So for those of you who don't know, he is the soon-to-be ex-CEO of Amazon. He's one of the wealthiest people in the world. And he has gone on record saying his job as the CEO of this company is to make 3 to 4 decisions a day. That's it. And if he doesn't sleep the night before, how can he be expected to make a good decision in those 3 or 4? And that's kind of how I look at this, right? Is when you are flailing, when you're panicked, when you're stressed, when you're under-rested, when you're overexerted, when you're overwhelmed, when you have anxiety, when you aren't eating properly, when you aren't exercising, you trick yourself into thinking more work means you're working well. And the truth here is, the better your mind is, the better your mindset is, the better decisions you can make. And it's a complete misnomer to believe that you can sacrifice your mental and physical health and make good decisions thereafter. So my job is to make sure that I'm mentally fit enough to do the work that I've laid out for myself, because I have really cool work that I want to do. And if I'm not in the best shape, then I'm not doing the best work. And people who tell me, I only got 3 hours of sleep last night, I'm like, well, you're gonna have to redo all that work. Like, because it's not good work. Like, you just have to come to terms with that. So I would say that establishing intentionality around what kind of work you want to do, what is your worldview, how do you operate best in the world, how much sleep do you need? All these things really matter. We think that they don't. We think that we'll do those things when we're retired, but living an intentional life today helps you retire better and helps you build better and helps you exist in a world that you don't want to retire from. I don't want to retire. I want to continue having the freedom and time to work on the things I love forever. I am not going to do that by grinding away at a job I hate.
Yeah, I mean, you use the word, my job is to, and you finish that like explaining this whole. And I think, I think a lot of people don't recognize that, you know, like your job is really to be able to look after how well you are so that you can cope and be at your best. And like you say, if you haven't had 3 hours of sleep, you have to go and do that work over. I like completely hear that. So in terms of failure, in one of the videos you were talking about failability, and I think I don't even know if that's a word. Is that like a real word?
No, it isn't. No, it's a word I coined.
So, but I love the idea, the concept about failability, and really, you know, how well you fail. But like you have a very specific take on it. So how do you define failure?
So I have spent the last 3 years since my last book came out trying to help people understand that we do not grasp failure effectively. And it's a very South African problem. And when I say South African, I mean societies like ours that are conservative and humble and that are struggling to find our voice in the world. I don't find this problem with people in America or UK or the EU that I coach and deal with. They see failure as something to aspire to, learn from, get through, and move on past. In South Africa, we believe failure is an end point. I started something, it failed, it's over, I'm done, let me go get a job. I don't see it that way. For me, failure is a through point. Failure is something that you need to mitigate in small batches. And if you're a business owner, you need to let your team experiment more often, smaller, so that when you do fail, it's not catastrophic. Same in your life. If you build up this idea that you have, that you want to launch for 3, 4, 5 years, you spend millions of rand on it, and then you put it out into the world and it doesn't work. You've got 4 years of baggage that is destroyed. If you have the idea, you put it out next week, you learn something, you iterate, you fail a little bit, you learn something, you iterate, you fail a little bit, then you're winning. That's why my first book was called Do, Fail, Learn, Repeat, because that's how I exist in the world. When I feel like doing something, I do it. If it doesn't work, I'm like, oh, why didn't that work? And then I do it again, and then I fail again until I get this mechanism that works. And then I'm like, okay, now we got something, let's push on. So we need to stop seeing failure as an end point and start seeing it as a through point.
Yeah, I love that. You know, I often connect failure, or very often you get to a point where you feel like you're going to fail, and you know it's always on the edge of your comfort zone. But I always share with clients that you know, the degree of your discomfort is the degree of your learning, and the more you embrace the fact that you potentially will fail, but the moment you sort of recognize the failure point, you kind of go, okay, cool, so what am I learning? And the moment you're having a learning conversation, you're not failing, you're just learning. You know, so I love what you're saying about how to sort of get your brain wrapped around failure through something.
And look, this has become a very topical conversation in the pandemic and leading into post-pandemic world is how resilient are you? Like resilience is tied to failure. Like if you are a resilient person, then you aren't scared of failure. You know that it's part of life. I've never met a successful person who has avoided failure towards their success. None. It doesn't exist. You cannot avoid failure and be successful. It is an integral part of existing as a successful person is failing, pushing through, moving on and getting through it. If you're trying to protect yourself and your family and your friends from failure, you're doomed. It's never going to happen.
Yeah. So, I mean, like one of the questions that are here, you mentioned, why do you put up with the stuff you really that you really hate? I'm not going to say it. Just in Ingrid, you know, phone me, it's like, what? Stop swearing on the radio. But I mean, I totally get the point. Like, why do you set up with the stuff that you hate doing?
Yeah, I can't understand why anybody in the world deals with people, things, scenarios, situations that they hate. Like, we have a very finite period in the world. I do not believe in an afterlife. I've been an atheist forever. And if, like me, you don't believe in an afterlife and you are an existential nihilist like I am, then every day that I'm on this planet is something I should cherish. And that means it's something I should do with my time. I should enjoy the things that I do. And don't get me wrong, of course, there are things I do that I don't like sweeping. But sweeping makes me have a clean house, which makes me happy. So there are obvious gives and gives. But if you are with a partner who you genuinely don't like, why? Why? What are you doing? Stop, wake up, go find happiness. If you're in a job that doesn't pay you enough to live well and you hate your boss, quit, go find another job. Move departments, confront your boss. There are no rules. And these things are also intrinsically tied, right? Having a worldview, how you perceive failure, how you see the world, your level of happiness and how important you think it is to yourself. All these things matter because one day you're going to get to the end of your life and you're going to think, damn, that was terrible. And that's absolutely not what that's not what I want from life. I would rather be affronting. And the rules thing is the one that I want to just hone in on for a second. We think that there are rules. We think that this society we have has very finite rules and we can't shift from them. One of my Nickisms is learn the rules, but ignore them. Because rules were made by the people who came before you. That's it. They were just made by other people, just like you, who were the loudest or the first or whatever. And in 2021, we're realizing that mostly they were made by white dudes in the West who told us how to exist. Like, the world has changed. You get to stop, you get to assess the rules you like, and you get to move on. Obviously, those are within ethical and moral bounds. You know, murder is a bad thing to do. Don't do it. But outside of that, there is no rule at your job that says you should be unhappy. So be happy. Same in your relationships.
Yeah, I don't you find, though, that even with the unhappy state, part of that has become part of people's defined
narrative.
It's the kind of it's the defined way of living. It's they identify with the hate that they carry, so they carry the hate around because it's like, oh, I hate this, but like, who am I without the hate? I don't know who that is. And if I am, that's going to be so much work. So I'd rather just hate it and be there and live there and drag this feeling with me throughout my life.
Yeah, absolutely. This victimhood has become part of our societal narrative. I got to grind hard. I'm busy. I got to be busy all the time. I don't have time for myself. Everything is so difficult. It is absolutely this idea that we don't have control, that somebody else has set this for us. And it fundamentally isn't true. I've started reading a lot of Stoicism, and one of the core tenets of Stoicism is this dichotomy of choice. You have two ways that you can react to anything and everything that happens to you in life. And you can give attention in those two ways. You can give attention to things that you can control, way one, or you can give attention to things you can't control, way two. Stoicism asks you to give attention to only the things you can control and then change them. You can't control the traffic. You are traffic. So get over it and don't let it bother you. You can't control how your boss treats you. You can control how you react to how your boss treats you. Those things help me understand that I have choice. I'm not a tree. I don't have roots. I can move. You need to see your life in this way. You need to be able to take ownership of the things you experience and have intentionality about the way you live your life.
So do you think that applies to the history? For example, I'm just thinking that, what I often find is people are very stuck in what it was supposed to mean. So they kind of go, yeah, but it's supposed to, that thing that happened to me, like that's what it means. So they keep, and you're kind of going, but you're not there right now. You're here in this moment, in this hour, in this day. You have to kind of let go of the meaning of what it is you're giving it.
Yes. So first, the comparison is the thief of joy. That's very common for a very good reason. The more you compare yourself to the way it should have been, the way it was supposed to be, all the things that you've missed out on because it didn't happen to you. For example, there's so many movies made about this. The idea that, I was the quarterback of my high school football team. I was supposed to be famous. Yeah, But if you didn't end up being famous, then get over it and start building the rest of your life. The other thing tied to this for me is the idea of comparison is tied to the idea of expectation. So we all expect that we are special. I am unique. It's called the spotlight effect. It's egocentrism. I am unique. Everybody's looking at me. And I covered that in my latest video about nobody gives a shit about you. But this ties into this, right? Because I think I'm special, because humans are egocentric by nature, we believe we deserve certain things. There is an expectation in our lives. And more often than not, the world we live in gives us an inflated sense of self. So we now have got direct access to Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and Oprah and Ellen DeGeneres, and we see their lives and we're like, why isn't that me? I am as talented as them. I work as hard as them. Here's the thing though, you're not as talented as them. You do not work as hard as them. You are not as gifted as them. You were not born in America like they were, or whatever. Your expectation does not match reality. And there is something that needs to be realigned. And it takes a lot of hard work, right? You don't one day wake up and become self-aware. I've spent 5 years with a therapist working on my perception of myself and my abilities. I read deeply. I work on the way that I exist in the world. You don't one day wake up and become an intentional, self-aware person who's lowered their expectations and exceeds them. For example, one of the things that I changed from my 20s to my 30s is I absolutely don't like cars. I drive a beat-up, second-hand, cheap-ass Bucky. Because I don't care. It does not define me. If you go to Joburg and you drive that car, people will laugh at you. That's not what I care about. And if I want to be there, then I just don't drive my Bucky there. Like, I just define myself differently. And I think it takes a lot of self-work to do that. And most people aren't willing to do the work.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you read, watch, listen to? So like, that's sort of a 3-part question. So, because I think, again, it's one of those disassociated moments where people they know about reading. They know reading is really good for you. They know about podcasts. They know about, making sure that you fill your social, if you are a social media person, to kind of fill it with stuff that is inspired. Like, they know about stuff, but they never really get to like, okay, yeah, this is actionable knowledge that I should be practicing here.
Yeah.
What is it for you?
So, cards on the table. Right now, I'm obsessively, and have for the last 12 years, watched MasterChef Australia. So that is what I'm obsessing over on TV front right now. And to be clear, I don't advise watching TV a lot. I maybe watch an hour of TV a day, maybe less. So I tried to steer away from that. Then right now I'm listening to the Ricky Gervais and Sam Harris podcast, which just came out. 2 people who absolutely blow my brain with the way that they see the world and think. Sam Harris is a psychologist who talks a lot about meditation. I use his meditation app called Waking Up. And Ricky Gervais is just one of the preeminent thinkers about life that I can think of in 2021. Then reading. Reading comes in waves for me. So there will be months where I read 3 or 4 books. There will be months when I don't read at all. I read to follow my curiosity. This is what my podcast is about, is called The Curious Cult. I have interviewed people from the Starbucks founder to professional sports people, and they all tell me the same thing. Follow what interests you. So the reading issue here is most people read what is trendy, what is cool, so they can have a conversation, so that they can say that they've read this book and, virtue signal. I read because I'm obsessed with learning and I'm curious about everything. So, for example, right now I'm reading about game theory and boning up on my knowledge there. I'm also reading the Leonardo da Vinci biography by Walter Isaacson. And then I'm reading The End of Homo Deus. But I obsessively read sci-fi books. So my all-time favorite top book to completely shift the way you see the world is a book called The 3-Body Problem by a Chinese author. It's a 3-part series on what happens when we discover that there are aliens and that they're coming to take our planet. And that is it's an astounding view on what does society do. And that helps me think about my business. It isn't just this escapistic view. This is deep, meaningful stuff that philosophically changes the way I see the world. And that's the world I want to live in, right? Is where I'm challenged all the time. I don't really read for escapism. I read to rethink the way I see the world.
Fascinating. Yeah, I'm like, I need to. I'm going to listen to this back and kind of go, okay, well, I need to go and check some of that stuff because I want to know more about it. So, but I mean, Nic, so one of the questions. I mean, this is a question you sent me, but do you just travel through life with no engagement, letting life happen to you? Like, does that tie back into everything we've spoken about? Like, how do you tie all of that into that kind of conversation?
Yeah. So I'm now 37. I turned 37 this month. And this sort of question starts to frame this period in my life and those around me, because this is the period when people start getting divorced, when business owners start leaving their businesses or breaking their businesses, when men and women have midlife crises. And I think that for too long, we exit our teenage years, which we believe are formative, and we were kids. And I mean, I was, when I left and went to varsity, I was an idiot. I didn't know anything. And I constantly reassess the way I exist in the world. So my question around, do you let life happen to you, or are you engaged in the experience of it, goes back to a decision I made about 10 years ago. I went to see a music concert. I can't think of who it was. And I looked around me, and I was doing it too. And everybody was holding up their phone cameras and recording this show. I thought to myself, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. None of these people are going to be able to hear this music again because it's so distorted. The video itself is so far away. Why are we experiencing this moment through the back of a phone? And that day I decided that wherever I am, I will first take in the moment, experience it. And if I feel like it after that, I'll take a photo. And the amazing thing is, I never take photos of that stuff anymore. I don't care. When I'm at concerts, I'm involved in the concert. And that is that whole idea of today is the most important day that you will ever have, because it might be the only one you ever have. Today, your actions matter more than anything else because they might be the only actions you ever have. And are you intentional about the minute you're spending right now? The time you spend today, you will never get back. And what I like to say to people is you will never, ever be younger than you are today. How are you taking advantage of that?
Never will.
Yeah.
As we speak. Yeah.
Yeah. When you think of it that way, it's kind of scary.
Yeah. It's like, well, the first thing that was like, I should be having sex in the next couple of hours. If that's the case, I'm like, make sure you're at least having, good sex. But the Nic, so I mean, like to tie up today's conversation, what do you want people to take away from this conversation? Because you're completely fascinating, and I'm like, no, we should have more conversations like this because I love that. Because like one of the things, and we're not going to have time for it now, but like one of the things I want to chat to you about is how to become like. You talk about living in the moment, being intentional, but how do you become an observer of the world that you live, and really sort of be in observation of what's happening instead of letting it just happen to you. But tell us, like, where do we get hold of you, and sort of what can we leave the audience with some tips today?
So I'll kind of answer that question in the last answer. What I want to leave everybody with is ask why more often. That's it. That's it about everything. I am obsessively asking why. Why is peanut butter peanut butter? Literally, I spent 3 hours researching peanut butter the other day. It was completely useless. It was fun as hell, but it didn't get me anywhere. But I still went and did the research. Why do I go to work this way? Why do I have this car that I own? And when you're asking yourself why, give yourself a real answer. There's nobody to lie to except yourself. Stop lying to yourself and just give yourself an honest answer. Do I have a 9,000 Rand car every month because I love this car now, or because I was tricked into it by a salesperson? And then make a change. So that's what I want to leave you with, is just ask why more often. Be curious about everything in your life and everything else. That's the thing that defines the most interesting people I know and the most successful people I know from everybody else, is they never settle with just because. There is no legacy thinking. Then where can you find me? I'm basically at Nic Harry on all social media. I do most of my posting on LinkedIn, which is Nic Haralambous, and my website is nharry.com, nharry.com. Find me, follow me, and subscribe to my newsletter all over there.
Fantastic. Yeah, guys, just a reminder that this is going to go out on Wednesday, and it's here every Wednesday. We're going to be at around 12 o'clock, and that's your lunchtime coaching segment. Nic Haralambous, just get it right. Haralambous. Nic Haralambous.
Nailed it.
There we go. Nic Haralambous. Guys, check it out. All the details will be in the description box below. Nick, thank you for your making time for us and chatting to us, and definitely thought-provoking conversation. And would love to have you back for some more.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin.
Cheers for now.